Welcome to Biden Brief. The content of the briefing includes Israel-Hamas war, Justin Trudeau urged to support U.S. Israeli theory on Gaza hospital attack. Intel, defense officials tell senators that Israel did not strike hospital. Egypt Sisi, Biden agreed to bring aid to Gaza in sustainable manner. First U.S. deportation flight lands in Venezuela under new Biden crackdown. U.S. court upholds NASDAQ board diversity rule. Israel-Hamas war, Justin Trudeau urged to support U.S. Israeli theory on Gaza hospital attack. The Toronto Star. The Canadian government has been urged by the federal Conservatives to side with the U.S. after early evidence suggested that an Israeli airstrike was not responsible for bombing a hospital in Gaza. While Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly condemned the bombing, they did not attribute it to Israeli forces. Trudeau called for accountability and for innocent civilians to be protected. The Israeli government has presented evidence to suggest that the explosion was caused by a rocket misfire from a Palestinian group and not by an Israeli airstrike. Intel, defense officials tell senators that Israel did not strike hospital. Hill. U.S. intelligence and defense officials have told senators that Israel is not responsible for a blast that killed hundreds of people at a hospital in Gaza, contradicting media reports and claims from Hamas that an Israeli airstrike caused the carnage. There is also no direct evidence that Iran ordered or had foreknowledge of the attack by Hamas militants that killed over 1,000 Israeli civilians living near the border with the Gaza Strip, lawmakers say. The U.S. officials also discussed the administration's efforts to recover American hostages and the transfer of U.S. military assets to Israel. Egypt Sisi, Biden agreed to bring aid to Gaza in sustainable manner. Reuters. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and U.S. President Joe Biden have agreed to bring humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip in a sustainable manner. The two countries are coordinating with international humanitarian organizations under the supervision of the United Nations to ensure the delivery of aid. First U.S. deportation flight lands in Venezuela under new Biden crackdown. Reuters. The first deportation flight from the U.S. to Venezuela under the Biden administration's new initiative landed in Caracas on Wednesday. The flight is part of a tougher approach to border enforcement as the U.S. struggles with record illegal crossings. The Biden administration has faced a surge in migrants attempting to cross the U.S.-Mexico border, including a significant number of Venezuelans fleeing economic and political instability exacerbated by U.S. sanctions. Since Biden took office, over 380,000 Venezuelans have been caught crossing the U.S.-Mexico border illegally, compared to just 2,200 in fiscal year 2019, and 1,200 in 2020. The deportation restart comes after the Biden administration granted deportation relief and work permits to nearly 500,000 Venezuelans who arrived in the U.S. on or before July 31. U.S. court upholds NASDAQ board diversity rule. Reuters. The U.S. Appeals Court upheld NASDAQ's board diversity rule on Wednesday, requiring companies listed on the exchange to have women and minority directors on their boards or explain why they do not. The court rejected lawsuits seeking to block the rule by the National Center for Public Policy Research and the Alliance for Fair Board Recruitment. The rule requires companies to have one director who identifies as female, a member of an underrepresented racial or ethnic minority, or LGBTQ+ by the end of this year or explain why they do not. Rishi Sunak to visit Israel in Middle East diplomacy push. The Independent. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is visiting Israel as part of a two-day mission to prevent the Israel-Hamas conflict from escalating further. He plans to press for the opening of the route into Gaza to allow for the delivery of humanitarian aid and the exit of those trapped in the territory. The UK government is urging for calm and stability in the region, and is working to facilitate humanitarian access into Gaza and secure the release of hostages. Foreign Secretary James Cleverly will also visit Egypt, Turkey, and Qatar to underscore the UK's message. U.S. President Joe Biden has also recently visited Israel and warned against being consumed by hate over the conflict. Biden to address nation on Israel-Hamas war and Ukraine. The Independent. President Joe Biden will deliver an address from the Oval Office on Thursday evening to discuss the ongoing conflicts between Israel and Hamas and Russia and Ukraine. The address comes after Biden's recent trip to Israel, where he met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. This will be one of the rare occasions that Biden has used the Oval Office format and asked for airtime during the evening hours. Biden's ambassador nominee for Israel likely to advance, despite Republican opposition. Hill. Republicans are signaling opposition to President Biden's nominee for ambassador to Israel, Jack Lew, but are likely to allow his confirmation to proceed. Senator James Risch, Republican Idaho, the ranking member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, said discussions are ongoing over whether any Republican senators may take action to block or slow down Lew's advancement to the Senate floor. Republicans have voiced their opposition to Lew, a former Treasury Secretary, criticizing his work in the Obama administration on the Iran nuclear deal, formerly known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Egypt agrees to open crossing for Gaza aid, Biden announces. The Independent. U.S. President Joe Biden has urged Israel not to make the same mistakes the U.S. did after the September 11, 2001, terror attacks. In a speech in Tel Aviv, Biden warned against being consumed by hate over the recent Hamas assault that killed over 1,400 people. He reminded Israelis that while seeking justice, the U.S. also made mistakes and caused the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Iraqi civilians in the Second Gulf War. Biden also called for a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and reiterated the U.S.'s support for Israel's right to defend itself. He asked tough questions as a friend of Israel and promised to continue deterring any actor wanting to widen the conflict. Biden's comments came after an explosion at a hospital in Gaza that killed hundreds of people. Israel said the explosion was caused by a failed rocket launched from within Gaza by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, while Hamas blamed it on an Israeli airstrike. Biden blamed an errant rocket fired from Gaza for the explosion. In response to the escalating conflict, Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has agreed to open the Rafah crossing to allow 20 trucks of humanitarian aid to access Gaza. Israel has said it will not thwart the delivery of food, water, and medicine for civilians as long as the aid does not reach Hamas. Meanwhile, protests have been held around the world in support of Palestine and against the Israeli airstrikes. Hundreds of pro-Palestine protesters gathered outside the International Criminal Court in The Hague to call for action against what they consider a genocide against Palestinians. In Washington, D.C., hundreds of protesters swarmed the U.S. Capitol to demand an immediate ceasefire in the conflict between Israel and Hamas. Hospital blast leaves hopes for Israel-Saudi deal plans in tatters. The Sydney Morning Herald. Jordan has cancelled a visit by U.S. President Joe Biden as tensions rise following the recent violence between Israel and Hamas. While Biden was due to meet with Arab leaders during the visit, Jordan has said that talks will not take place until both sides agree to end the war and the massacres against Palestinians. The cancellation of the visit follows U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken being kept waiting for several hours by Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Experts suggest that Arab leaders are distancing themselves from the U.S. because they are worried about their association with Israel and want to avoid being seen to side with the West. The ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas has led to widespread condemnation in the Arab world and has the potential to escalate tensions further. Analysts warn that as the conflict continues, perceptions of Israel across the Arab world will deteriorate, making it difficult for Israel to normalize relations with Arab states. The conflict also has the potential to disrupt efforts for greater diplomacy in the region, and could further entrench the belief that normalization cannot be decoupled from the Palestinian issue. U.S. announces family reunification process for certain Ecuadorians. Reuters. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security has unveiled a new family reunification parole program for certain Ecuadorians, which aims to provide a legal pathway to the U.S. for those with relatives already in the country. The program will grant humanitarian entry for a period of 3 years while individuals await approval for permanent residency. This initiative is part of President Joe Biden's efforts to expand legal pathways to deter illegal border crossings. The program mirrors similar initiatives already available to nationals of Cuba, Haiti, Colombia, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. The U.S. government data indicates that approximately 99,000 Ecuadorians were apprehended crossing the U.S.-Mexico border illegally between October 2022 and August 2023. The U.S. has also established overseas processing centers in Colombia, Costa Rica, and Guatemala. How the deaths of Biden's first wife and daughter changed his politics. The Independent. Joe Biden's personal tragedy, the deaths of his first wife and youngest daughter, have greatly influenced his career and shaped his views on healthcare and grief. In 1972, just days before Christmas, Biden's wife Nylia and daughter Naomi were killed in a car accident. The couple's two sons, Beau and Hunter, survived. Biden has often spoken about his grief and mourning, using his personal experiences to connect with voters who have experienced similar loss. He has emphasized the importance of finding purpose and realizing that loved ones who have passed are still a part of oneself. His family also played a role in his first State of the Union address, where he spoke about being a single father and called for universal childcare and support for veterans. Biden's personal tragedy has been a significant factor in his political career and has influenced his policies and the way he connects with the public. How the Gaza hospital explosion set off a furious scramble before Biden's Israel trip. CNN. U.S. President Joe Biden's visit to the Middle East went ahead despite a deadly blast at a hospital in Gaza just hours before he was due to leave the White House. Officials evaluated early evidence that strongly suggested Israel was not responsible for the strike, giving the green light for Biden's visit to proceed. The trip only included a stop in Tel Aviv after Arab leaders canceled a planned summit in Jordan in response to the hospital explosion. Biden said the U.S. would continue to study the intelligence, but blamed errant rocket fire from a terrorist group in Gaza for the hospital strike. Thursday briefing, Biden backs Israel on the hospital blast. New York Times. U.S. President Joe Biden has announced $100 million in aid for Gaza and the West Bank, and said he had secured a commitment from Israel to allow food, water and medicine to be delivered from Egypt. His comments came during a visit to Israel, during which he said U.S. intelligence showed that the explosion at the Ali Arab Hospital in Gaza City was caused by Palestinian fighters. Aid has begun to arrive at the Rafah border crossing. LaFonza Butler makes history as first out LGBTQ Senate Judiciary Committee member. CNN. California Senator LaFonza Butler will fill the Senate Judiciary Committee seat left empty by the passing of Senator Dianne Feinstein, a history-making move that also gives Democrats back their razor-thin control of the powerful committee tasked with vetting federal judicial nominees. Citing Iran deal, U.S. Republicans criticize Biden's Israel nominee Lou. Reuters. President Joe Biden's nominee for ambassador to Israel, Jack Lew, faced opposition from Republicans during his confirmation hearing due to his past involvement in negotiations with Iran. Democrats have been rushing to confirm Lew quickly to offer support to Israel in the aftermath of the recent attack by Hamas gunmen. Despite Republican opposition, Lew is expected to win Senate confirmation. Security was heightened at the hearing, which was interrupted by protesting. Lew emphasized his intention to be tough on Iran, and said that he did not believe the nuclear pact should be reopened. U.S. response to Israel-Hamas conflict faces scrutiny amid growing concern over Gaza death toll. Yahoo! U.S. President Joe Biden is trying to strike a balance between supporting Israel and expressing concerns about the safety of civilians in the Gaza Strip as violence in the region escalates. Biden visited Israel on October 18 and was due to hold a meeting with Arab leaders in Jordan, but this was postponed after an explosion at Al-Ali Hospital in Gaza City killed hundreds of Palestinian patients and refugees. Israeli authorities said a failed rocket launched by Hamas caused the explosion, while authorities in Gaza said it was caused by an Israeli airstrike. The White House has faced increasing scrutiny over its handling of the crisis, including from progressive lawmakers and Arab American leaders. House Democrats have called for a ceasefire in the region amid the continuing violence, while hundreds of people have joined protests at the U.S. Capitol and the White House. The administration has also faced criticism for its response to the attack on a 6-year-old Arab child in Chicago, and over Islamophobia in general. Biden has a tough road ahead to keep Israel's war from widening. The Independent. The strike on Al-Ali Hospital in Gaza City has resulted in a high death toll, potentially reaching hundreds, with many of the victims being women, children, and the elderly. This attack has occurred at a critical time, as Joe Biden is trying to prevent the conflict from escalating further. The news of the strike has sparked anger and condemnation in the region and beyond. Woman becomes Israeli folk hero for plying Hamas militants with snacks until rescue mission arrives. The Toronto Star. Rachel Edrei, a 65-year-old Israeli woman, has become an unlikely Israeli folk hero after she outwitted and pacified Hamas militants who stormed her home. After providing them with food and drink, Edrei managed to keep the militants calm for 17 hours until a rescue team arrived and fatally shot them. Edrei became known as the consummate Jewish mother online, and was invited to meet President Joe Biden during his recent visit to Israel. Ford says U.S. fuel economy plan would cause automaker economic hardship. Reuters. Ford Motor Co. has criticized a proposal by President Joe Biden's administration to increase fuel economy standards for vehicles through 2032. The proposal aims to cut greenhouse gas emissions and reduce fuel use, with a target of achieving a fleet-wide average fuel efficiency of 58 miles per gallon. Ford argues that the proposal would result in substantial economic hardship for the company, citing estimates that it would face $1 billion in civil penalties by 2032. The automaker called for a reduction in the proposed fuel efficiency hikes for SUVs and trucks. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the 6 degrees. Today, we have a diverse range of news stories to discuss, from the Israel-Hamas conflict to U.S. immigration policies, and even a heartwarming tale of bravery. So, let's dive in. First, let's talk about the Israel-Hamas conflict. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has been urged to support the U.S. Israeli theory that an Israeli airstrike was not responsible for bombing a hospital in Gaza. While Trudeau and his Foreign Affairs Minister condemned the bombing, they did not attribute it to Israeli forces. It's a tricky situation, and both sides are presenting evidence to support their claims. As an observer, I would say that the truth needs to be uncovered and accountability must be ensured. Innocent civilians should always be protected in times of conflict. Moving on, U.S. intelligence and defense officials have contradicted media reports and claims from Hamas that Israel was responsible for a blast that killed hundreds of people at a hospital in Gaza. The officials also mentioned the administration's efforts to recover American hostages and transfer military assets to Israel. It's a delicate situation, and the truth needs to be established through thorough investigation. In a positive development, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and U.S. President Joe Biden have agreed to bring humanitarian aid into Gaza in a sustainable manner. This coordination with international humanitarian organizations under the supervision of the United Nations is crucial in ensuring that aid reaches those who need it the most. Now, let's shift our focus to U.S. immigration policies. The first deportation flight from the U.S. to Venezuela, under the Biden administration's new initiative, has landed in Caracas. This comes as the Biden administration faces a surge in migrants attempting to cross the U.S.-Mexico border, including a significant number of Venezuelans. It's a challenging situation, and the administration is trying to balance border enforcement with humanitarian concerns. In other news, the U.S. Appeals Court has upheld NASDAQ's board diversity rule, which requires companies listed on the exchange to have women and minority directors on their boards. Lawsuits seeking to block the rule have been rejected. This is a step towards greater diversity and inclusion in corporate America. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is visiting Israel as part of a mission to prevent the Israel-Hamas conflict from escalating further. Sunak plans to press for the opening of the route into Gaza to allow for the delivery of humanitarian aid. The UK government is urging for calm and stability in the region, and working to facilitate humanitarian access into Gaza. It's important for world leaders to come together and work towards a peaceful resolution. Now, let's talk about President Biden. He will be addressing the nation from the Oval Office to discuss the ongoing conflicts between Israel and Hamas and Russia and Ukraine. This is a significant move, as Biden rarely uses the Oval Office format and asks for airtime during the evening hours. It shows the gravity of the situation and the importance of addressing these conflicts. In other news related to Biden, Republicans are signaling opposition to his nominee for ambassador to Israel, Jack Lew, due to his past involvement in negotiations with Iran. However, Lew is likely to be confirmed despite the opposition. It's a reminder that politics can be a complicated game, and nominees often face scrutiny and criticism. To wrap it up, I want to highlight Biden's visit to the Middle East and his call for calm and stability. He urged Israel not to be consumed by hate and emphasized the need for a two-state solution. Biden's personal experiences with grief and loss have shaped his policies and the way he connects with the public. It's a reminder that leaders are not immune to personal tragedy and that empathy can be a powerful force. Now I turn to you, my dear viewers. What are your thoughts on these news stories? Do you agree with the U.S. Israeli theory on the Gaza hospital attack? How do you feel about the U.S. deportation flight to Venezuela? Let's discuss and share our perspectives. The 6 Degrees is all about engaging in thoughtful conversations and learning from each other. So fire away with your questions and ideas. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Dr. Six, your friendly observer from the 6 Degrees, signing off. Stay curious and keep seeking knowledge. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6 Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6 Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6 Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6 Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6 Do Brief via email.